Shalom, Israel. This is Yehusha ben Moshe Eliyahu from YHRIM Ministries. This is the last week of the 12th month in this, the acceptable year of Yahuwah 5998 SC, of Yahuwah's scriptural calendar that is written in His Word. It's been several weeks since I've made any videos. Those of you who follow our Facebook page, you know that the laptop which I use to edit all the videos and work on the website, among many other things, it died about a month ago now. I have since built a desktop system to be able to replace that laptop. There was a few of you who sent in some finances which helped with that, and we greatly appreciate it. I wanted to make this video several weeks ago, especially since it's nearly the end of the year. The main part of this video is going to be speaking about and concerning next year's projected calendar. Before we begin in that, I first want to ask a question. Do you read Yahuwah's calendar, or do you rely upon the projections and calculations? Just think about that for a while as you watch this video. In recent weeks, we've had quite a few people asking about why they got an error page when they clicked on the link to next year's projected calendar. As I posted on our Facebook page, it's been a couple months ago now. I've also told a few in some email replies and things. I actually took down next year's projected calendar. We're going to go into why here in just a moment. Those who's been on the website here in the last few days, you might have noticed that I've removed the links altogether. Why did I do this? Well, that's what we're going to get into. Back about 17 years ago, after Yahuwah first taught my Abba, Moshe Eliyahu, about his true Shabbat and his calendar from the scriptures, the first year, which was the pagan Roman year of 2000, we made monthly calendars, 1 month at a time. And we printed off each month as we came to it. Then we started getting a lot of requests from people, some that were in the assemblies, some other people that we come into contact with. They wanted to know the calendar months ahead of time. That way they could schedule their vacation time, their work time schedules, and all of that thing around the feast days and the other Moedim. So, in 2001, we began making calendars projected out a full year in advance, and we have done so every year since then. This current year, which is now coming to an end, as this is the last week of the year, last week of the 12th month, there has been at least 3 times during this year where we have had to make corrections to the projected calendar. After each one of these corrections, we had to republish and update the calendar, in which is why we sent out newsletters and other things to let people know that something had changed. When we were working on these corrections, we quickly began to realize that something in the man-made moon conjunction times and some of the other timings and how they were being calculated had changed in some way. Then as we began to re-examine our projections for next year's calendar, we began to find even more problems. This is why that I pulled the calendar down from the website several months ago. Since then, we've been working on next year's projections and trying to figure out what exactly had changed in the calculations and what we could use to be able to make an accurate projection. What we have come to realize is we can't. The moon conjunction calculations given by the Naval Observatory, which is used by most of the websites that you see, most of the software programs, the star software programs and things, and anything else that shows this or related information, almost all of these get their timings from the Naval Observatory. However, what we have found now is that they no longer correctly align with what is actually being seen when the time arrives. Further, we've tried to use other software programs like Stellarium, which we have mentioned several times in past newsletters and other things, in comparison with other software programs, and none of them seem to agree. Not only concerning when the moon goes dark or the official conjunction time, but there are also some other issues, such as it showing that the moon would be too small to see on the morning of the last Shabbat of the month, the 29th day Shabbat, yet it still shows that the official conjunction doesn't happen for another 24 or more hours later. Also, the position of the moon in relation to the sun doesn't make sense in some instances. If the moon was still 24 or more hours away from conjunction. I'm not going to try to go in all the details or to show all of this, as it would eat up a lot of time. But we have been reading and watching the actual sun and moon for many years now. We've also been using the official moon conjunction times, what is usually referred to as new moon times by most scientific entities. We've also been watching these and using these for the projections for many years as well. What I can tell you now is that these calculations and the other tools are no longer reliable enough to make an accurate projection, especially when you're talking about a year in advance. These tools in the past have been a help for people to learn the calendar and how it works, because Yahuwah's calendar is so foreign to people today. They've been useful in making projections ahead of time, to make a calendar in a similar format that people's used to. They were also helpful if there was weather, storms, rain, clouds, chemtrails, etc., where the moon could not be read on a specific day. But, and however, people have also become totally reliant upon these tools and trusted in them instead of actually going out and reading the sun and moon to verify if these tools were correct or not. In the end, if these tools are no longer reliable, then there's no way to make an accurate projected calendar a year ahead of time. That's just simple facts. As we've always stated for many, many years now in newsletters, every time we publish a calendar, and that's why we always highlight it at the top of the calendars, we've always tried to strongly reiterate that the calendars we published were only a projection. In other words, with the tools and information we had, it was our best guess in advance of when the days in the Moedim were going to be. Further, the projected calendars we put out may not be accurate for where you live. If you live here in the U.S. or even Canada or Mexico, then yes, the Eastern Standard Time or Central Standard Time calendar projections were probably the same for anyone living in this region, as from the East Coast to the West Coast is only about 3 hours difference. So if the moon is visible in the East Coast just before sunrise, it's probably still going to be visible just before sunrise on the West Coast 3 hours later. The GMT calendar projections, on the other hand, should have been accurate for the UK and that region there, although I had no way to confirm this as I don't live over there and I didn't specifically know anyone there. However, the only reason we made the GMT or UTC time zone, they're both the same thing, the only reason we made those projections was so that people could take that as a basis and then calculate it to whatever region that or whatever nation that you actually lived in. Okay, that was to be just a general basis for that anyone could use and translate it into whatever time zone, whatever location that you lived in. The only thing is, people that lived far away from the UK and that entire region in the GMT time zone still used the GMT projections as they were, without even checking to see if it'd be correct for where you live. We also know and have seen many people who follow the projections, whether it was ours or anyone else's, irregardless if they were true or not. Some people done this because it's the time that they already scheduled their jobs or other events around. Others done it simply because that's what the piece of paper or the calculation showed, and that was enough for them. It goes back to what I asked you a few minutes ago. Do you read Yahuwah's calendar, which is the sun and the moon, his two witnesses, or do you simply rely upon the projections, whether those projections are put out by us or other groups, or if you go by the Naval Observatory calculations or whatever else? Now, there are also other people who have stated that we shouldn't use the moon calculations or any of these other tools and projections at all, that we should only go by what we can go out and look up and read from the sun and the moon, because that is what ancient Israel did. Well, that's true, to a degree. First off, ancient Israel had a vast amount more knowledge of the sun, the moon, and the stars than we do today, unlike what modern science claims. So the tools they had made and the knowledge that they had about their phases and movements, I guarantee, far surpassed what we had today, even with these modern man-made tools. Further, ancient Israel also did not have to deal with the chemtrails and how this beast system so often completely blankets the skies with them to the point that even the sun cannot be seen. This is one of the main reasons why Satan has used this beast system to pour out these chemtrails 24/7. They never stop, and it's only getting worse, like several of the articles that we have posted recently on our Facebook page that they show. Satan knows there are Israelites trying to understand, read, and follow Yahuwah's calendar. So he tries every way he can to stop us. Whether that be by sowing a multitudes of false teachings to lead people astray, or by sowing chemtrails to literally cover the skies, so that the sun or moon can't be read. As Yahuwah made my Abba, Moshe Eliyahu, to understand about 3 years ago now, which he has since put into several newsletters and teachings, that these chemtrails were foretold in the Word, as they are the fulfillment of Gileanah, or Revelation 8:12. You can go look that up for yourself if you don't know it. I'm not going to get into the details of that in this video. That could be an entire video all by itself with that and related events. We may get into that in another video later on. Now, getting back to the projected calendar, since the moon conjunction time calculations and the software and these other projections have at least some problems and issues that cause us not to be able to accurately project a calendar a year in advance, they can still be used as a help at times. But what are we as Israel supposed to be doing? We need to go back to the way that Yahuwah originally intended, and as we have tried to reiterate and tried to get the point across to people, you must go out and read his two witnesses, the sun and the moon, as they are what actually declare the calendar, not these tools. This is why you should have been doing this all along, while you still had all of the resources available. And there is a few of you who did so. And it's always great to see that and to hear from people. But basically what it comes down to is, when you read the sun and the moon, you can only do it 1 month at a time. because you have to actually wait until that month is arriving to be able to read the moon at that point in time to know exactly when it's going to begin. Which brings us to present day. This is the last week of this year, last week of the 12th month. Which means that this week everyone should be watching the moon, especially the last few days of this week, in the mornings. Then come on the 28th day and also on the 29th day, which is the last Shabbat of this year, in the morning before sunrise, look into the east. We need to see if the moon is visible as it rises. The moon will rise while it's still dark, or at least before the sun comes up. On the 28th, the moon will still be visible. But from the information that I currently have, what I can see at the present time, the moon most likely will not be visible on the morning of the last Shabbat, which is the 29th. If this is true, then that evening, this coming Shabbat at sunset, that evening as Shabbat is ending, Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the first month, which is Abib, will begin, which Abib is the only month that Yahuwah called by name. However, if the moon is seen that morning of the 29th, the last Shabbat, then that means that there is a 30th day this month. Because if the moon is large enough to be visibly seen that morning, then there is not enough time for it to go through conjunction before sunset, as we have explained many times in newsletters and also in teachings. So, what do you do if it's storming, or if there's chemtrails that's covering the sky that morning? Well, that's when you hope that there's other people living in different areas who have a clear view of the sky, who can bring in their reports of what they were able to see or not. Now, if other people who are reporting, as there are few, if they also cannot see for some reason, like chemtrails or storms or whatever, then the only thing that we're left with is the calculations and the other tools. And we can only make the best decision that we can at that point. We try to do the best we can until such a time that the moon is once again visible in the first week, or even as we approach full moon. At that point, if we see the moon and see that there's a correction that needs to be made, we'll have to do it at that time. Yahuwah knows our hearts, and He knows if we're working to try to keep His calendar. If we do the best that we are able, under the conditions and circumstances we are faced with, then if we are wrong on when we keep Shabbat, I believe Yahuwah to extend His grace and mercy. As I've stated many times in the past, I, for one, will certainly be glad when Yahuwah's calendar is once again read and declared by the priests, His priests, when He restores the priesthood, as is foretold in the Word. Further, Yahuwah will at some point restore His calendar back to a full 360 days, with a perfect 30 days each and every month, just as it was in the days of Noah, all the way up to the days of Hezekiah, which again we have in teachings. We may at some point make some videos concerning these topics. But the perfect 360-day year and the perfect 30-day month every month will not be restored until some point after the Mashiach's return. Again, as we go through this week, everyone needs to be watching the moon. As we approach the 28th and the 29th, it should become more obvious if the moon is going to be visible on the 29th. Looking at the moon, looking at its size and position ahead of time. The 28th and the 29th in the morning, it will come up before sunrise. If you wait until after the sun comes up, the sun will be too bright and you won't be able to see the moon at that point. That's why you have to see it before sunrise. We just need to get everyone together and to go out and actually read the sun and the moon. The more reports that we can get, the better off we are. And it's not just here in the U.S. If you are in whatever region, whatever nation, you can send in your reports. We will post them as well for your region. Just make sure to include your location, no matter who you're sending in a report, no matter where you're at. Please include a location, at the very least what nation that you're in. And that will give other people that's in that region something to go by as well. You can send your reports in. You can email them to us. You could also send them as a message on our Facebook page. We will collect all the posts and post them together along with any photos as well. And hopefully, as we go forward in this, we'll begin to get more and more people to help go out and look and report on this. Before we end this video, there's one more thing I want to bring up. It also concerns this calendar, and it also concerns this week as well. And that is the turn of the year. If you follow us on our Facebook page, you probably saw that I just made a post about this the other day. As we've stated in multiple teachings, just like Yahuwah Shabbat and his Moedim, man is also not the one who determines when the scriptural year begins. It is also determined by his two witnesses that he put in the Shamayim, the sun and the moon, just as is written in Bereshith, or Genesis 1:14. This is an excerpt from the Turn of the Year teaching that we have on our website. Bereshith, Genesis 1:14, Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the Shamayim to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for Moedim, and for days and years." In this one verse, it covers all of Yahuwah's times, including the year. Unlike what a lot of different people teach. There's a lot of different teachings about how to begin the year and what begins the year. But as we clearly see here in Bereshith 1:14, it is declared by the sun and the moon, just like every other aspect of Yahuwah's calendar. As I state here in this verse, Yahuwah covers all days, all the Moedim, which includes the weekly Shabbat. It's a Moedim and a sign, by the way. And years. All on Yahuwah's one calendar. He does not have two calendars, as many people try to teach. The 4 times covered, signs and for Moedim and for days and years. This covers all of Yahuwah's time. I'm not going to go into all the details here. Signs is in Shemoth, or Exodus 31:13. He tells us that the Shabbat is a sign between Yahuwah and his people throughout their generations. Moedim covers the weekly Shabbat, the very first thing mentioned of the Moedim in YHRIM, Leviticus 23. The first 3 verses there is about specifically the weekly Shabbat. After the weekly Shabbat, the rest of the chapter 23 talk about all the other annual Moedim and the appointed times. All of them are also covered under Bereshith, Genesis 1:14. As is stated in Psalms 104:19, the moon is for Moedim. You can't get any clearer than that. Days, again, this is stating that the sun and moon covers all days, whether it's a work day, a Moed, a Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, any day. And pertaining to this video, years. This is the first verse in Yahuwah's word which shows that the sun and moon also control the year. Now, throughout the word, as the title of this document indicates, it is the turn of the year. You see this phrase used throughout Scripture. In Shemuel 11:1, and it came to pass at the return of the year, at the time when Melachim kings go forth to battle. Okay? However, as I point out here, now this is a major point. The turn of the year is not only listed for the beginning of the year, but also again in the fall. Shemoth, Exodus 34:22. And you shall observe Chag Shavuot of the Bikurim of the wheat harvest, and the Chag or feast of ingathering Sukkot at the turn of the year. Okay? That shows this, in this one verse right here, shows that there is a turn of the year at Sukkot. We have up here the turn of the year in the spring when the kings go out to battle. Now you got many other verses which also mention the turn of the year. This is all in the Torah here, and then you also have a lot more verses in the scroll of Yashar. What's important here about showing that the turn of the year happens twice, not just once, one of the main teachings that is being taught today is that the green ears or the green barley is what determines when the year begins, which there is absolutely nothing in Scripture to indicate this. And further, green ears on the barley only happens once in the spring. Therefore, this cannot be what is the turn of the year in the fall. You can go through the rest of this document here. I actually need to update this document. I wrote this quite a few years ago, and I haven't updated it for quite a while. But you can go. You can still get the main idea and to learn and understand what is the turn of the year. It's actually very simple, and we're going to get into that in just a moment because this took place this very week. As I mentioned here, the turn of the year is also what determines if there is 12 or 13 months. Again, the 13th month is not added when man wants to add it, but rather when the sun and the moon determine it. It is not determined by man. Yahuwah's calendar has nothing to do with any man-made calendars, and it also is not controlled by men or their ideas. It is declared by his two witnesses. Now, if you read the rest of that document, you'll learn and understand what is taking place at the turn of the year. It's actually very simple. If you follow our Facebook page, you saw this photo, which I just posted the other day. Now, this is stellarium. I just used this for to make a diagram to kind of see and explain it. But this right here, this first photo here, is this past Shabbat, the beginning of the Shabbat, right at sunset as Shabbat began. This is the sun looking directly west as the sun set. You can see at this point, as Shabbat began, the sun is now setting to the right or the north side of west. Here it is at the end of Shabbat, the beginning of the first workday. You can see the sun is setting further to the right or the north side of west. And again, this end of the first workday, start of the second workday, you can see it's further still. If we look at stellarium for sunset that occurred this evening, today being on the pagan Roman calendar, March 22nd, get close enough to see here, you'll see that the sun is continuing its northward progression. This will actually continue. The sun will continue to set further and further to the north side or to the right side of west until summer begins, actually. But this shows the turn of the year. The sun is actually the main factor in the turn of the year. In the turn of the year document, I actually talk about the sun and moon. But the main controller, as far as the year is concerned, when the year begins, is the sun. Now, how can you go out and determine this by simply looking at the sun itself? Well, if you go out in the evening at sunset and watch as the sun is going down, the only thing you need is a compass. Okay, this particular one here is a military compass. I like this style for a couple reasons. But the main reason being is that you can actually use it to sight with. On this side here, this is a small magnification lens which magnifies your degrees on the compass itself. Okay, So you can look through here and find exact west, and you can sight through this groove right here at the top, along with this line that is in the lid of the compass here. You can sight the sun and watch exactly where it sets in comparison with direct west. Now, if you don't have a compass or don't have a military compass that you can sight with, a regular compass will work. It's a little harder to sight. You also can use, if you know of a landmark that you know is direct west, you can use that as well. And if you do have a compass, I still suggest that you locate, using the compass, locate a landmark that you know exactly where west is, just in case. Now, there are other tools which can be used as well, such as a sundial. You can use the shadow of a sundial during the daytime to also determine exactly when the turn of the year occurs. So if you haven't seen it yet, if you missed it on this past Shabbat, don't worry. You can go out and you can look at the sun, because each day, as I was just showing in those photos, each day the sun, as it sets on the horizon, will only progress further and further to the right or the north side of west. So it just becomes more apparent. So you can watch it this whole week. The main point of it being, as I stated, this shows, because it occurred in the 12th month, the sun is declaring that there is only 12 months this year. There is not a 13th month this year, as the next Rosh Chodesh begins Abib the 1st. Praise Yahuwah. This is the two main points that I wanted to cover in this video. I want to get this out because we are in the last week of this year. Next year is approaching very quickly. We pray that people will go out and read the sun and the moon in particular at the end of this month, as I was speaking about earlier. Please go out and read it. Go out and read the moon for yourselves and read Yahuwah's calendar, because those are his witnesses which declare forth his times, not just the man-made projections and calculations. As we get information in, we will be posting it to our Facebook pages. I will probably send out a short newsletter as well once we are able to make an accurate determination of when the year begins. As we close here, if you're looking for the links to our main website, YHRIM.com, the Signs of the Times Facebook pages, our YouTube channel, or any other links, all of those is in the video description, which is below this video on our YouTube channel. You might have to click the show more to be able to see all of the links. We praise Yahuwah our Elohim, and we pray that you, Israel, have a blessed week in Yahushua HaMashiach's great name. Until next time, Shalom.